Election night brings big changes to Texas politics.
The House is going to take on a different look.
But the biggest winners weren't even on the ballot. How Greg Abbott and Ken Paxton are driving change at the Texas Capitol.
Tonight, we can proudly say the state of our union is strong and getting stronger.
President Biden sends his message to the nation. But what did Texans think? The Lone Star response to the State of the Union. A new investigation into the response to the Uvalde school shooting finds police did not violate any policies.
And you're going to tell me nobody did anything wrong? Shame on you. Shame on you.
The angry response from families and what comes now in the push for accountability after the mass shooting.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm Will Dupree. Josh Hinkle is on assignment. Primary election night delivered major changes in Texas politics, but two of the biggest winners weren't even on the ballot: Greg Abbott and Ken Paxton. Both the governor and attorney general campaigned against members of their own party, and they had some notable wins. Paxton targeted incumbent House Republicans who voted for his impeachment. He endorsed 37 challengers. 8 of them won. Among them is Mitch Little, who served as part of Paxton's legal team during his Senate impeachment trial. Little defeated incumbent Cronda Timish. Interestingly, he used to be on her team. Little was her campaign treasurer, but resigned before the impeachment trial. 8 candidates Paxton endorsed advanced to runoff elections, most notably David Covey. He's challenging House Speaker Dade Phelan. The speaker led the impeachment effort against the attorney general. Paxton and former President Donald Trump endorsed Covey. This is the first time in more than 50 years that a sitting House Speaker has had to face a runoff election. Paxton also backed challengers to 3 Republican judges who currently serve on the Court of Criminal Appeals, the state's highest criminal court, and all 3 of them won. Lee Finley, Gina Parker, and David Schenck will face Democratic challengers in November. Meanwhile, Barbara Hervey, Sharon Keller, and Michelle Slaughter will be off the court after the election. They all lost after Paxton campaigned against them. It comes after those judges ruled the Texas Constitution prevents Paxton from prosecuting voter fraud cases without permission from a district attorney. Meanwhile, Governor Abbott targeted 14 Republican House members who opposed his plan for education savings accounts. And as our Ryan Chandler shows us now, the governor made good on his promise to push some of those lawmakers out of the Capitol.
The House is going to take on a different look.
Gary Van Dever has never faced a tough race. Across 6 elections, this was the East Texas Republicans' first scare, forced into a runoff, courtesy of Governor Abbott.
Of course, all of this came about because of my vote on the vouchers.
The people of House District 1 obviously support parental choice.
Abbott's chosen candidate, Chris Spencer, says it's time for new leadership.
Representative Van Dever and I are alike in that we both strongly support public education. What I support are the rights of parents to make the decisions.
Their race is just one example of Abbott's retribution against Republican roadblocks. These are the 85 Republicans that served in the Texas legislature last session. Bear with me. On the left, in the red, are allies to Governor Abbott when it comes to support for education savings accounts. But on the right are the 21 Republicans who blocked that priority of his from becoming law. Governor Abbott knocked out 5 of them in the primaries on Tuesday by endorsing their pro-voucher opponents. Another, a 6th one of these incumbents, lost without much direct involvement from Governor Abbott. Now, 5 of these guys aren't running for re-election. We already know that 2 of their challengers running to replace their seat are in support of the governor's priority.
Maybe the philosophy of the House will change a little, but I plan to be back, and I plan to work with anybody that'll work with me to do good things for my district and do good things for the state of Texas.
Ryan Chandler, State of Texas.
Here's a closer look at the impact of the governor's endorsements. He supported 14 House challengers. 7 of those candidates won their primary election. 5 of the candidates are now heading into a May runoff election. Just 2 of the challengers Abbott endorsed ended up losing their primaries. We're bringing in Jim Henson now. He's the executive director of the Texas Politics Project at the University of Texas. Jim, thank you for being here. What a week it's been.
What a week, yeah. We're still catching up on sleep as we were discussing.
It's been a little bit difficult to do that. But just, we're a few days past the primaries at this point. So as you're looking at the results, what are some of your big takeaways from those contests and as we prepare for these next runoffs that are to come?
Well, I think one of the things we're doing while we're trying to catch up on sleep is kind of ponder it. It's a lot to digest. I would really underline, I guess, two big things. First thing is that, this was not, there's a lot of discussion about this is a big win for Governor Abbott. A lot of his candidates succeeded. He exerted himself. And I think that's important, not just in the horse race part of this, but in the bigger picture, that Governor Abbott has really exercised an ability to intervene in the legislative branch at the electoral level. And that really aligns with the broader trajectory of his governorship, in which he's really strengthened the office of the governor and the role of the executive branch that he has authority over in the political system. This is just going to reinforce that. I think that's a big takeaway. The other obvious takeaway, but that I think requires some subtlety, is the ongoing struggles inside the Republican Party. And I think however these runoffs resolve themselves, the story, as you well know, of the last legislative session, which lasted all year, was one of ever mounting and ever vicious, frankly, conflict among Republicans in the legislature, including in the House. And I think what this portends is that is going to continue into the next legislative session. Bad news for the professionals, which is less than a year away.
Yeah, so much tension that bubbled under these last couple of years or so will only continue perhaps. So as we're looking at the Republican caucus that may be coming to the Capitol next year, there may be some new faces in that mix. Does this at all affect the likelihood of Governor Abbott achieving that dream of creating education savings accounts here in the state?
Yeah, there will be some new faces, and there'll be a lot, and a lot of them will be more pro-voucher than the old faces. I think this is an area where we have to see what happens with the runoffs and what happens in the general election, of course, and see what the composition of the legislature is. I think the thing we know for sure is that the share of Republican members, particularly in the House of Representatives, who oppose vouchers and are really willing to go to the wall for it, will be smaller. We still don't know how much, but the one thing we do know for sure is that education savings accounts, vouchers, whatever you want to call them, they'll be back.
Now, looking at turnout statewide, we saw pretty lopsided numbers for Republicans versus the Democrats. Should that send any kind of alarm bells for Democrats here in the state?
Well, I think the alarm bells are ringing so steadily for the Democrats that they just become background noise. But yes, I think if you look at the numbers, so many more Republicans turned out now than Democrats in the primary. Now, some of that is an immediate kind of issue in terms of what was going on in this primary. No competition at the top of the ballot for Democrats. The Republican race is settled. You had a Senate race in which the leading candidate, Colin Allred, who avoided a runoff in his nomination race to face Ted Cruz for the U.S. Senate, pursued a strategy that was basically ignoring his opponents, and sort of that was not a mobilization strategy. So those two things meant there was no reason to expect high Democratic turnout.
All right, we'll leave it there. Jim Hitson with the Texas Politics Project, thank you for being here.
Great to be back, Will. Thanks.
The state's largest ever wildfire destroying not just homes and land, but livelihoods, adding up the cost to ranchers and who's stepping up to help. President Biden sends his message to the nation, but what did Texans think? We look closer at the response to the State of the Union.
We keep getting kicked while we're already down.
Outrage from families of children killed in the Uvalde school shooting. Why a new report into the police response is highlighting frustration in the community.